Hi, this is Dave Roundtree, author of Paranormal Technology, Understanding the Science of Ghost Hunting, lecturer, author, and paranormal researcher. And when you're not busy in the field, do what I do and listen to the Malliard Report with Jim Malliard.
The opinions expressed in the Malliard Report are those of the host and participants and are not intended to and do not necessarily reflect the opinions of any simulcasting radio network or sponsor. All listeners are advised to make their own decisions.
It's the Malliard Report, yeah, the Malliard Report, the paranormal talk radio show with Jim Malliard as your host. See what life's beneath, any paranormal activity, go inside a world that others don't want to see. It's the Malliard Report, yeah, the Malliard Report. That it is. I hope everybody's having a great time. I'm trying to get away from evening, but we all know it's Tuesday night, 9 p.m. Eastern live, so wherever it may be, however you may be listening to it, I want to thank you for tuning in tonight. So right now, I'm going to bring my guest up. We just spoke a moment ago. Now we're switching to call type, so we'll see if he's ready for all of this fun stuff. So my guest tonight is Noah. Hello, Noah. We were just talking about hoping you're all ready and all situated. So
I hope I am. You can hear me?
I can hear you, and you can hear me, obviously, which is always half the battle. So, so first, tell me about your group. We'll start with the easy questions.
All right, sure. I'm the founder of the Paranormal Investigators of Milwaukee, and we are a group that uses science to try and debunk claims of paranormal activity, and those that we can't debunk, we do our very best to try and capture those claims on either audio or video. We do not charge for any of our investigations, and we also have a passion for educating the public about what we do as paranormal investigators. So we have a lot of free library events and stuff like that where we give a brief presentation about us and display some evidence that we were able to capture during our investigations.
Yeah, we'll get into the charging thing here in a little bit. We'll just I know that's a hot topic for you right now, but we'll get to that. And I've shared my opinions on that before, so it's not necessarily breaking news. So we can get to it here in a little bit.
Okay.
So, when was your group founded? What was that process like? I like talking about that, the nuts and bolts and the old good stories, so to speak.
Sure. So I moved down to Milwaukee in the summer of 2004 for graduate school. And after a year of graduate school, I realized I had more time than when I was in college, believe it or not. And so I started looking into this interest that I had in the paranormal. I never had a paranormal experience or anything like that when I was growing up. It was just something that intrigued me. And I wanted to see if I could apply my scientific background to the field. I saw that, at least from what I was able to see via TV and what I could find on the internet, there weren't a whole lot of people who had any sort of formal scientific training, and so I thought that I might be able to bring a little bit of that to the field and help out in that regards. So I actually co-founded a different group than PIM in 2005. I found some like-minded individuals who were starting to form a group, and because I did so much, they offered me a co-founding position in that group. And so I was with that group for about a year and a half. And then after that, there were some differences in opinion about how we thought an investigation should be run and what things should be allowed and shouldn't be allowed during an investigation. And so we parted ways, and that's when I founded PIM in February of 2007. And basically, I just founded it based on how I thought an investigation should be done, using as much of my, the scientific aspect and the scientific method as could be possible. And I thought that the only real way to do it this way, in the way that I thought should be, would be to start my own group. And I had learned enough in that first year and a half of that first group I had co-founded to be able to kind of get the basis of what I needed. So I put a ragtag website together. I'm no website designer by any means. And put a little application up there, and I started getting people applying, believe it or not. They found me somehow. And so it just kind of snowballed from there. The first year was very slow, as I'm sure it is with most groups. You're trying to develop your reputation and your name recognition and let people know that you're there. And as we got more recognized, we got more members. And as we got more members and more recognized and been around for longer, we got higher profile investigation cases that we were able to do, and as you know, here we are today. We have currently have 9 members in the group, and I like to keep it around 10, so we're always looking for another 10th member. But it's at this point, it's not just at first you're taking anything that has a pulse almost, but then as you get more established and you have a good core group of people, you start being much more picky about who you have come on your team to make sure that they're going to bring something to the team that we don't already have, as well as meld well with the group of people that you currently have, because as you probably know, paranormal groups come and go quite frequently. I think the average lifespan of a paranormal group from inception to massive explosion is about a year, and so we've been able to outlive that for many multiples, so we're happy with that.
Yeah, I was going to say, a year, 8 months, depends on the people, but yeah, somewhere in there. It's a process. Like you said, it's a learning process, how you interview people and how keen you are now to being more choosy when it comes to members. It's phenomenal, because I started mine 2008, so I understand what you're talking about.
Yeah, the things you learn that you have to ask somebody when you're interviewing. It was a very big learning curve. What sorts of questions you have to make sure to ask, like, are you out on probation? Are you a felon? Do you have a car that works? We're not a taxi service. Do you have a job that you get money for? These are all things that we ask now, which in the beginning I was just like, what do you think about the paranormal? Why do you want to join PIM? Those are important questions too, but those other questions are also very important, so you know what kind of person you're getting involved with, because this stuff takes a lot of time. You're going to spend a lot of time together in the pursuing ensuing months, so you want to make sure that you have at least some idea what you're getting into. Yeah,
obviously. And I think that's where some of the problems lie. That's why so many groups are out there, because everybody thinks they can do it better. But of course, I think we've learned by now that I don't think it really matters if you can do it better. It's just finding the right group of people.
Exactly. People who can coexist together for long periods of time when you're overtired, which you don't see a lot of people when they're overtired besides your family members. And so it's a different niche, and getting to know how those people are going to react in those situations is very difficult. So we gather as much information as we possibly can, and we also ask what their favorite tree is as a nice psychological little question-answer thing at the end of the interview. We're compiling a data set right now, depending on comparing members that worked out with members who didn't work out, and seeing if there's any correlation between the type of tree that they selected. So, I'll report back when we have some findings on that.
That's interesting. I mean, I always joke about that question, but I never really thought to study it and go deeper into it.
I think it actually is a psychology question, but I don't have a background in psychology, so that's about the extent of my knowledge about it.
Well, it's all about, people ask me sometimes, I post random statuses on Facebook, and people are like, why'd you do that? Or who are you accusing of what? I'm like, I'm not accusing anybody of anything. Are you guilty of it is the question. You see people like, oh, I didn't do that. I'm like, oh, I wasn't thinking about you, but okay.
It actually fits now, yeah. Thanks for bringing that up.
The shoe fits wears it.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess I should probably give you a proper introduction. I gave you a proper introduction, but I like to hit it once or twice. I try to do it every so often, but it ends up happening once or twice at night. My guest tonight is Noah Leah of the Paranormal Investigators of Milwaukee. And your website is, and I just had it, where's it at? I have, all these things open. Paranormal-milwaukee.com. There we go.
That's it.
So tell me a little bit about that, because I'm on it, obviously. So what can people find there?
You can find our cases. So we generate a report for every one of our investigations that we do. So you can peruse all the different investigations that we've done, read the report, whether we got evidence or not. There'll be a report generated, and so you can see what we did and what we didn't do. And if we do have evidence, you can review that as well. We also have quite a bit of information, just kind of trying to be informative, about from from the fact page and what to expect from an investigation from us and what sorts of things that you shouldn't have to worry about when you're doing investigation. 5 steps of an investigation, what we consider to be 5 steps of a paranormal investigation. We also have our newsletter archives listed there as well. So we have a free online newsletter that we email out to people if they want to be on the list. And if anyone listening wants to be on the list, you can find the subscribe link right on our website on the navigation bar there. It's really easy to find. You can sign up and you can unsign up anytime you want. We also have a little Paranormal 101, what's an EVP, different types of hauntings. We have kind of a very pithy spot in our hearts for orbs and why we don't think they're ghosts. So we have a little section on that. As well as some information regarding environmental data and how that may or may not affect paranormal activity, or at least what the theory is behind it. We track, when we do our investigations, we track all the environmental data that we can, beyond outside of, barometric pressure, humidity, temperature, but also looking at space weather as well, things like solar wind and coronal holes, as they can affect Earth's magnetic field, which can in turn affect the pieces of equipment we use, such as EMF detectors. So these are all things that we need to be aware of and make sure that when we're doing an investigation that we're not jumping to conclusions.
Yeah, of course. That's the important thing, I think, that everybody needs to understand, that want to jump to conclusions. You were talking about if you didn't find evidence. Now, how often does that happen? Because I find it more often than not that's the case.
Oh, yeah. I'd say about 95% of the time. Probably more higher than that, probably like 97%. After doing an investigation, we don't come up with anything. And some people I've been accused of not, doing a good job of being a paranormal investigator if I don't find evidence. And I actually think that means I'm doing a better job, because if you're doing your due diligence and, controlling for things and cross-checking your data against other pieces of equipment when you're running, you should be able to rule out most things. It's not as common as people would like it to be thought that it is common to get paranormal evidence on an investigation. It just doesn't happen very often. That's part of the reason why you're seeing these TV shows, which are based on investigations. They're going away, and now you're seeing more of these docudramas, which are people retelling the story that happened to them, and they dramatize them. And because that's more exciting and it's more predictable, right? When you're doing an investigation like on Ghost Hunters, they might get nothing, and the only thing you can show is Steve running away from a spider. Whereas other times, if you have somebody recounting a scary story, you know the ins and outs of that story. You know how you can make it interesting for the audience, and that's why these sorts of investigation things are going away. So we don't find evidence very often. Actually, we just posted a case that we got evidence for the first time since I think it was last October. It was the last time we posted an investigation that actually had any evidence attached to it. And it wasn't like we weren't doing any investigations in that span. It's just the name of the game. You do a lot of time and effort debunking. You find natural explanations for things, and then you spend 6 to 8 hours on an investigation. Generally, you don't come up with anything. But I'm okay with that, because I'm finding the truth, which is what I'm out to do.
Yeah, I totally agree with you on that. It's not always about. I don't know. I'm trying to word this so I don't get in trouble. Oh wait, too late for that. It's not always chasing fires. Know, there's always there's those people get the scanners. Oh god, that's a whole other can of worms. I don't want to go there. But they want to go see the fire every time.
Right.
It's not always like that. There we go.
No, it's not.
I skirted around that nicely. I didn't bash anybody.
Well, my favorite phrase when it comes to this sorts of thing, when it comes to evidence, is when you hear hoofbeats, you think horses and not zebras. And in the paranormal field, there's lots of people looking for zebras. And they assume that the zebras, instead of actually turning on the light and looking and seeing that it's a horse. So this is the problem that we run into, and unfortunately, the groups who get the most evidence, and I say evidence with air quotes, are the groups who are going to get more press and more notoriety. Because look, I caught 30 EVPs during this one investigation. Well, I don't care who you are, but that's impossible.
Yeah.
Like you're doing something very wrong if you think you've gotten 30 EVPs from one investigation. And there's groups in this very city of Milwaukee that believe that. I think the record someone in my group counted was 149 EVPs they caught, and there was another one where they said they caught well over 200. They stopped counting after. I can't imagine what that sort of review session is. It's like every 10 seconds you caught another EVP. It's amazing. So it's things like this that get me frustrated to a certain extent, because knowing how much work and effort it goes into properly control an environment like we do it, and the amounts of equipment that you need to be able to properly control it, it just is frustrating. We're like, yeah, I got 150 EVPs. Baloney.
Last June, I want to tell you, Thomas Fusco was on here, and he called those people trophy hunters.
That's probably it's a good descriptor.
I'll dig up the link for that and send it to you. You'll enjoy that interview, because that's just the tip of the iceberg for that one. But and I want to change your analogy to unicorns instead of zebras.
Oh, okay.
It fits better with the paranormal realm.
It does. or Pegasus.
Yeah. Oh boy, we're gonna get in trouble tonight. I just feel it coming. Well, I wrote a few things down here. I pulled out of the bio that was sent to me about you and off your website, and the one word that I only this one word is just singular by itself. So I think we're going to get in trouble if it's you're skeptical. And we were just talking about that, but so why are you looking then if you are not of the believer ilk? I guess is the
well. So I characterize myself as skeptically optimistic. So I think that of all the claims of things that are supposed to be attributed to being paranormal out there, 99.9% of those, maybe 99.99% of those, are explainable in some way, shape, or form. And whether the explanation is found or not doesn't really matter. It's most likely explainable. But that 0.01% or 0.001% or whatever else you want to look at, if there's some truth, there's some bit, some kernel of events that are occurring out there which are beyond the scope of what we understand, that to me is interesting. And especially as a scientist, it's a question that begs an answer. And I think that that is why I do it. And I'm trying to do it in such a way that can clearly delineate between a normal explanation and something that is unknown. Now, whether that unknown is going to be a supernatural explanation or not, well, I'm not saying that. I personally believe we don't know what ghosts are or what the paranormal is. Is it spirits of dead people? Is it, demons? Is it, other dimensions? I don't think we know. There's no evidence pointing, ruling in or ruling out any of those explanations, actually. However, I think by just doing it with an open mind, but being very critical about how you do it, is going to yield more information for the field overall. And so that's why I do it. It's the thrill of the chase. It's the possibility of finding something that was previously unknown.
Yeah, it works. Makes sense. I agree. It's not always the finding. It's the understanding what people are explaining to you. Sometimes it's not. How do I say this? It's not always the investigation. It's the work that goes into it beforehand, trying to figure out what may be going on at their house that may be natural, so you can go in and say, oh, look, there's a big tree hitting the side of the house. Okay, done.
Exactly. And you can help people, too. There's people who are genuinely scared. So we kind of have cases split up that way. We have, like, residential cases, people who have family or themselves who are generally afraid of what they think is going on in their home, and we can help them by like, I know you think that this is something paranormal, but it's more likely that it's this explanation that we were able to figure out, and that makes them feel better. And I like, helping people in that regards. And then we have the other half of our cases, which are places which are, haunted for one reason or another. It's a commercial thing, or it's something that they think it's neat, but there does seem to be some actual claims of activity going on there. And so those are more study cases where you go in there trying to try new experiments or new pieces of equipment or whatnot to try and figure out if you can either rule things in or out, or capture some of this anomalous data which has been reported there. So that's kind of how we look at it. But we definitely do try and help people when we can, although they're not always receptive to the answers we get. The medium we had come in here, they said that there was this, and that. Like, well, I know that's what the medium said, but I think the reason that you're having this is this, and this is a logical explanation. So not everyone is open to those sorts of responses, but the people who are truly scared and they just want to have their house back are very, very thankful that we're able to help them in that regard, and that's very rewarding in that respect.
Yeah, it is. Okay, so I'm scrolling down. I'm looking at your 5 steps of investigating here.
Yes.
And I scroll. I mean, they're pretty similar to what I do. So, and then I'm scrolling down through it, and then I in big bold letters it has, "Please be patient with us." And I had to stop, and I was almost laughing while you were talking there because that's that. Boy, it seems that's the hardest part for people. They want the immediacy. I think I just made a word up. Somebody will probably yell at me for that too. Immediacy.
I think it might be a word.
If it isn't, it is now. You heard it live here first.
Webster will be on the phone.
But you said here about the 60 hours review.
Mm-hmm.
It's just so true. So I guess let's talk about that part of it for a minute, because it says you wrap up. You do 6 hours or something like that, and then you wrap up and go home, and people forget that you have real lives and families and stuff. So how does that process work? I mean, let's skip ahead a little bit here, I guess, because we could talk about the other stuff, but I want to drive this point home that it does take time. So you leave the client's house. We'll go with that one, and then how long is it? I have it right here in front of me. I could probably keep rambling on about this, but how long does it take you from that point once you leave to?
Well, you drive home, you unload your gear, start charging batteries, and you hit the rack, because it's probably 2, 3 o'clock in the morning minimum. And then you get up the next day, and you either you're taking care of your family thing. We do most of our investigations on Friday or Saturday nights, so you have family stuff you're doing, you have housework that you're doing, and then you have your job when the week starts that you have to do. We don't get paid to do this. And we're not like on TV where we can just wake up the next day in our hotel rooms and spend the entire day just poring over our evidence that we captured from the night previous. It's not saying that we don't want to do that. I mean, I'm not saying that wouldn't be great if I could do that. But, in reality of the vast majority of us as paranormal investigators, that isn't how it works. You are fitting in this time. And I routinely am up, I get my kids to bed. And then maybe around midnight on a weekend, my wife will go to bed, and then I am up between the hours of 12:30 and 3 a.m. reviewing video, because that's the only time that I have to do it where I'm not going to be annoying my wife because I'm not helping her with the kids, or losing time with my kids because I'm out reviewing video. So that's basically where it is. You fit it in when you have the time, and sometimes that's wee hours in the morning, sometimes it's on the drive. When you're listening to audio on the way into work, on the way back from work. I have a job, luckily, where I can listen to audio while I'm at work, and it's not an issue. So I do that, but not everyone has that luxury, and so they're doing it at their home when they have the time. So it's something that, believe me, we want to get to as soon as we can, but we do have the lives, as you said. We have all the responsibilities that we have to take care of. The ideal paranormal investigator is someone who is independently wealthy, has no family, and no pets, because then they can run through evidence like nobody's business. But, fortunately, and I say fortunately on purpose, there aren't a lot of people out there like that. And so it's something that we kind of have to work around. And it's sometimes hard for people to understand. We had an investigation. We just did a short investigation at the Riverside Theater this last Thursday, and I got an email the next day from the person who was there. We were doing an investigation for this person who was coming to visit Milwaukee and do a tourism thing on Milwaukee, and there was a kind of a spokesperson there with him. And she's like, "Oh, did you find anything from your recordings? Like, you must be done with reviewing them already, right?" It's like, actually, no. It'll take about a week or so for us to get through. It was only a 3-hour investigation, but again, we have audio and video and everything else that we have to go through.
Yeah, it's just phenomenal. So I'm again hacking your website, not necessarily digging for questions, but I always find them as I'm scrolling through. And first I like your site because there's no cheesy ghosts flying around annoying me as I'm trying to look at your site. I just got to say that first and foremost.
Thank you.
I'm scrolling down through here, and I see this little name that jumps off at me, David Roundtree, because he's been a guest a number of times on this program. Mm-hmm. So, and you're using the Roundtree recorder. So how is that working out for you?
It's working out great. We haven't found any yet. We haven't found any differences between the EMF sensitive microphones and the sound only sensitive microphones. But I've only used it, I think, at a handful of investigations so far. I actually have yet to review. We just did a little mini expedition out east. We went to Pennhurst Asylum and Eastern State, and I used the round-tree voice recorder there at both those locations, but I haven't had a chance to review that audio yet. So I don't know if I may have captured something from there, but it's a handy little thing. It takes a couple minutes to set up, and it's a very simple proof of concept of using two different sets of microphones, one of which are sensitive to only sound waves and one that are sensitive to sound waves and EMF directly, and then looking at those waveforms and seeing if you can see a difference. So, but I love it. It's a really interesting concept. These are the sorts of things I wish I could come up with myself.
Yeah, I know. When he first told me about it, I'm like, no, really? I mean, he's so much, of course he words it so much, and I'm like, just drawing on myself, and I'm like, bottom line that for me. And he's like, oh, it's just two different types of recorders, different sound treatment. I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah, it's really simple when you think about it, but you have to, because he's a sound engineer, essentially, that's what he does for a living. He knows about all these things and the intricacies of it, and someone who's not a sound engineer wouldn't realize that the difference between this microphone and that microphone is that one could be actually stimulated by not a sound wave. And he based that off of his vacuum jar experiments with capturing an EVP that inside a vacuum that it wasn't most likely coming from a sound source. So it's interesting. I wish we could do that on a regular basis because it would rule out all audio contamination, which is the biggest issue in any investigation. So if you could put something in a vacuum and record still, and then you basically would hear nothing unless something was stimulating it via EVP, or via EMF, I'm sorry. So that'd be really interesting to do, but unfortunately difficult in a field application.
My guest tonight is Noah Leah. Leah, right? Am I saying your last name right?
It's Lee.
Okay, I'm sorry. Should have corrected me earlier. That's okay. You can yell at me.
I thought you said it correctly the first time, so apparently I wasn't paying close enough attention.
I may have said it right the first time and came back and slaughtered it the second time. That's okay. Probably the last time I'm going to say it tonight, just so you know. No. Well, I've got the interesting stuff backloaded, so if anybody's been kind of wondering why I've been kind of strolling around, because I have some other stuff I want to talk about, but I don't want to get to it too soon, so, yeah. We're playing the good show host guest, and he's from Paranormal Investigators of Milwaukee, and that is at, and I just deleted it so I could...
ParanormalMilwaukee.com.
There we go. I was going to say I just deleted it so I could post it in the chat rooms, and then I couldn't find it again. Always special on my end. Thank you. And you're on Facebook and Twitter and...
Yep, Facebook and Twitter. Twitter's at ParanormalMKE is our Twitter handle. Shout out to Jan Goldberg, who is our Twitter meister for the group. She does a very good job.
She does. She's been trading. We've been setting this up. She's on top of things, so just so you know. I don't know if you need to know that.
Oh, I need to know. I need to know what all my people are doing. So, yes, it's good to know that. Yes, she does a good job.
Yes, she does. I need one or two. I'm just kidding. I'd be the worst boss ever. I'd be like, so, where are all my emails? Why aren't they done yet? They haven't sent them yet. Well, that's too bad. It's your problem, not theirs. So, she sent me a little note to ask you. Well, she said if I wanted to, I could ask you about this, and then I'll get back to the paranormal field here in a minute. Okay. We'll end with the juice and making people mad at me. Notice I said me. Well, they're already mad at me most of the time, so that's okay. So I want to talk to you about zombies.
Yes.
You have a fancy title, which I'm not even going to try to pronounce. So go ahead.
So I have a master's degree in epidemiology. And epidemiology is essentially the study of human diseases, looking at patterns. It's most famous in things like outbreak and things like that. You're trying to find case zero. And so I have an interest in infectious disease. That's why I have a master's degree in epidemiology. They do a lot of stuff with health departments and community health sorts of things.
Okay. So that sounds way out there.
So how does that relate to zombies, you might ask?
Yeah,
well,
it's just I'm just I understand the interest in the human body, and then I'm like, I'm still in the twilight here, but I'm sure you're going to fix me here. Go ahead.
I'll work on it. We'll see what we can do here. So a lot of the zombie lore, a lot of the stories that are circulating in movies, they're centered around people getting some sort of virus which makes them into a zombie. And so I was asked at one point on another show if that was like possible, if that could happen or not. And I said, sure, it could happen, but there's an issue with becoming a zombie. And the main focus of being a zombie is that your heart's not beating anymore. And the issue with that is that when your heart isn't beating, you're not circulating blood through all your organs, and you're not removing waste from them. And when that happens, things start to die, and things start to decompose. And essentially, you're going to fall apart. So you could be a zombie for probably, I don't know. I'm not a coroner would probably be better at knowing this, how long a body will take to decompose. But it starts instantly after your heart stops beating, and if you don't get it going again pretty quickly, it's permanent. But I'd say maybe a couple days before parts of you start falling off, because the connective tissue, all that stuff, just starts degrading. The bacterial flora in your gut just starts eating itself because there's nothing else to eat because you're not eating anymore. Well, unless you're eating brains, I guess, then it would have something to eat technically. But so these are all things which, in the realm of realism, wouldn't really work too well. And a virus is generally something that wants to propagate itself. And so if you kill the host too quickly, you're not able to pass on to the next individual and keep living. You'll die. And so the idea of a virus kind of turning some people into zombies is possible, but improbable as far as the zombies lasting long enough to, cause a worldwide sort of epidemic, which is the premise of World War Z, I believe, the movie that's coming out or is out.
So, Zombies versus Plants, which is one of my favorite games on my phone, or my Kindle, I guess it is. It isn't going to happen? Is that what you're trying to tell me?
Most likely not. Like I said, I'm not saying there won't ever be a virus that could put somebody in a zombie-like state, but if part of that is your heart not beating, it's not going to last very long. You're just going to fall apart because you start rotting from the inside.
Yeah, and then I guess your heart would have to restart then after a certain period of time to be reanimated, I guess is the best way to put it. Yeah.
I mean, unless the virus was somehow neuronal in nature and it was operating your brain functions, so it could make you move your arms and legs and stuff like that and give you some sort of focus. But what your heart really does is circulates that blood, and the blood is what is the life force of every organ, including the brain. So without that, it's going to die. Without the oxygen, without removing of the waste from the cells, it's going to put everything in system shut down really quickly. And I should interview a medical doctor to figure out exactly how long. But my understanding is it won't be very long, maybe a couple days at best, before, like I said, you start losing the feet, you start losing your arms. You're gonna blow it out. You're not. You might look like a zombie, like an actual zombie, like they do in the movies. But you're not gonna be able to move around. You're not gonna be able to chase people down. It's not gonna happen.
So your best advice is to trip the slow one, then. No.
Yes, definitely trip the slow one. They won't get back up. Their leg will probably fall off. They won't be able to walk anymore. And then you're safe.
No.
There's Jan's zombie. She loves when I talk about zombies. I don't know why. She has an issue.
Well, everybody has their little issue with zombies or vampires or whatever their
werewolves.
Whatever their creature may be.
Right.
I think you understand that vampires don't glitter, right?
What? No. Now, Jim, don't you go wrecking my world like that.
All I hear is this firm click. No.
I'm done.
No, it's okay. I had to go there, I guess, for some reason. My key demographic just got disappointed teenage girls.
Oh, yeah.
I don't think
lost half your listeners.
I was going to say I probably just lost one listener who was here by mistake.
What is this about? Where am I right now?
So
zombies.
They said they were going to talk about zombies, and that doesn't sound like they were talking about them at all. So, I mean, practically, besides the little zombies, what else does that help you with? Does it help you with investigating at all? Knowing about different diseases and stuff?
Well, somewhat. Knowing some of the symptoms of what the diseases are can help people if they're experiencing things. But generally, those are more chronic things or drug-related things, and we have a pharmacist on the team who helps a lot with that. But really, the epidemiology degree, not so much the infectious disease aspect of it, but more the how to design an experiment aspect of it. So a lot of what my degree was focused on is how do you design an experimental trial? How do you design an experiment so it's controlled properly and you're not introducing bias into it so that when you get data out of it, it's not, flawed data. And so it's really that aspect of the degree that helps me more with the paranormal investigating, because I can apply that to my investigations, as much as possible. Thinking about confounding factors, thinking about biases, recall bias is a huge one in our field and what recall bias is, for those who don't know, is when you ask somebody to remember something that happened in the past, it's automatically recall bias. They're not going to remember everything as in much detail as if it happened a minute ago, as opposed to an hour ago, as opposed to a day ago, a week ago. The further out you go, the less likely you're getting anything close to a realistic report of what happened. And it's not because they're lying, although sometimes they are, but really it's because this is what they remember. And so these are things I learned when I got this epidemiology master's degree, and it really does help me during the interview process when we're talking to people what they did, and planning the investigation to figure out, okay, what sorts of things do I need to look out for? Are there animals in the house? Is it a busy street? Is there a dog that's going to bark constantly next door? These are all things which are going to be confounding factors for our investigation when you're trying to gather, high level audio and high level video. You know about these sorts of things, and it's not that I need the degree to do it, but it opens my mind to all the different possibilities of things that can cause things to become flawed and to cause issues in the investigation that if you can plan for ahead of time and remove, then you have a better overall product at the end.
Right. Sorry, I was just looking at your website. Why ghosts or orbs aren't ghosts? I'm sorry.
It's fascinating, isn't it?
I've seen I've seen all this stuff before. It's just I was listening and then I started looking at this, and it's just amazing what people have tried to. Because 90% of those come from somebody trying to pass it off as something that it's not. So it just cracks me up. Yeah, it's we put this up here. We put this up here so we can direct people to our website, so I don't have to repeat the same thing over and over again. We love our library events because it gives us an opportunity to educate people, the general public, and to get our name out there into the community. But we also hate them because we have to see all these orb pictures and other, photographic anomalies that people think are evidence of hauntings in their homes. And after a while, you just get sick of saying the same thing. Oh, well, I think that's probably some dust or a bug or precipitation or, I know you're not going to believe me because you've already convinced yourself this is evidence of a ghost, but this is my opinion of it, and I'm sorry I can't validate what your flawed opinion is. And so I kind of feel bad, but at the end of the day, that's what it is. Yeah, it's just remarkable, some of the things that, and then you also have where'd it go? Camera strap and people smoking, which is another occurrence that I get a lot.
Yeah, that was actually one of the reasons why I left the first group I co-founded, because everyone in that group besides myself smoked, and I could not convince them to not smoke on investigations. I mean, they weren't smoking like in the investigation, but they'd have to go out and have a smoke break and then have to come back in. It just they couldn't understand why it was not a good idea. But now we don't in the current group we don't have anyone that smokes. It's not because I exclude people who smoke. I have it on the website in the application that says, they ask the question, do you smoke or not? And then if they do smoke and they apply and we move on with the interview process with them and I talk to them on the phone, I tell them in no uncertain terms you have to be able to control your habit. We do 8-hour investigations. We do overnight investigations. You're not going to be allowed to smoke the entire time. generally I don't hear back from those people.
Yeah.
So, someone who smokes is more than welcome in PIM if they bring something else to the table, as long as they can control their smoking habit. And if anything, if they really want to be in PIM, maybe it's a great reason to quit.
Yeah. It's a good reason to quit. I mean, you should quit anyways. But
Right. But maybe joining a paranormal investigation group will be in the straw that broke the camel's back, and they'll quit.
Or they'll find another group and smoke all the time.
Which is, I guess, fine by me.
It is what it is. So we're trickling back to the topic that I saved, and we're about 20 minutes out, so I guess I probably should get there in case we start ranting like idiots, like I probably will. I got a little notice that you were talking about another team, and I'm not going to mention the other team, so we're not going to give them any publicity tonight. Good idea?
Okay. That's fine by me.
Okay. But, so there's a group in your local area that charges for an investigation.
Yes, there is. I recently found out about this. I wasn't happy,
so
to say the least.
So explain to me what how do you know they're charging, and what are they charging? Do you know what the amount is? And give me a little background.
So this group has existed for a while. They've existed for a little less than our group has existed in time, and I actually found them because the group that I co-founded actually recently dissolved, and 2 members from that group went to this other group. And I found this out, and I thought, oh, that's interesting, because one of the members I actually respected. He was a very, for the most part, knowledgeable individual about equipment, stuff like that. And so, I thought, oh, this must be a pretty high-end group, a good group. Because the group was also not where this person lived. They were actually in another state. And I thought, well, that's kind of weird that they would, join a group that's not even in the location where they're at. So I'm like, well, I should check this group out. So all I did was go to this group's website, and I was just looking over the website, looking at what they do, and the person who runs this group is apparently a famous medium, and she was on one TV show that was short-lived, but was on the TV show, and so I thought this would be very much on the up and up. But right there on their website, they have what their charges are, and their charges were and still are $1.95 per mile for a gas charge, round trip. And if it's over 100 miles round trip, there will be a mileage and a lodging charge, which will apply. And then for the investigation themselves, they have a tiered investigation charging system. So for Tier 1, which would be a 1-day only, 5 hours or less investigation, they call it the basic investigation. It does not include EVP review, a baseline meeting, any mediumship stuff, which they charge extra for anyways on this person's personal website. There's no follow-up review. You don't get copies of evidence, but they do not require a donation. That's what they put it at, is there's 0 donation required for this basic investigation. That's Tier 1. For Tier 2...
But you have to pay the gas mileage.
But you still have to pay the gas mileage and lodging if it's over 100 miles round trip.
Just making sure I have my facts straight.
So no donation, but still paying the mileage.
Okay.
So for Tier 2, you're still paying the mileage.
Right.
But in Tier 2, you get between a 6 and 8 hour investigation. You do get your EVP review and a baseline meeting. Your recommendations, so they apparently give you recommendations about what to do about your haunting.
Which is called medium, but okay, continue.
They give you those recommendations via email. You do not get any sort of follow-up review. There are no copies of evidence provided. And you have to pay a $100 donation for the Tier 2 investigation. Now, there's a third tier. Tier 3 includes everything from Tier 2, except for recommendations, you get an in-person recommendation instead of one via email. You also do get follow-up review as well as copies of your evidence, and that will cost you $200 donation, again, on top of the $1.95 per mile round-trip mileage that you're already paying.
Okay.
So it's really a deal in the end when you look at it. And,
by the way, I got to mention this is not his group. FYI, just bringing that back up.
Not
for those who weren't paying attention.
This is not my group.
Okay.
Somebody else's group that I found about, and I didn't have to do a lot of research. It's right on their website. It's not like they're hiding it or anything.
So is there another tier, or is tier 3 it?
No, tier 3 is it.
Okay.
That's it. I mean, that doesn't count the mediumship charges, which you have to go to. You have to go to this person's personal website in order to see what those charges are. I know they charged. It was like $1.65 per minute for EVP review, and there was I think $60 for a single person half-hour session to be read, I guess, was on there as well. So the price could climb very quickly depending how many mediumship add-ons you want to do. It's like when you go on vacation or something. Well, I want to do the waterfall tour, and I definitely want to go snorkeling. So how much is that?
Yeah.
So these are all sorts of things that we get to look at here. And so I found this out, and I didn't at first. I'm like, well, how should I react to this? Should I just act like I never saw it? Should I just be like, well, I guess it's their thing, But I actually kind of got pissed off, and because this group is not too far from us, and and they've been around for a long time, and they are supposedly so great and all this stuff. If you read their website, that's basically what they say. They're so fantastic, and apparently they're doing things so differently than everyone else that it validates their charging for these services that they're giving and recouping of costs and so forth and so on. And so I said, you know what? I'm just going to put a little question on their Facebook page. It was a simple question. It was an innocent question. I basically said, how do you charge for investigations? ? That's all I put. And the first response I get back from the group leader was, what do you mean, like via PayPal? Or do you mean like how can we charge in an ethical meaning? So they're like thinking I'm somebody off the bat, like I just am wondering, how do you get this money? People just pay you in cash or what? No, PayPal, that's the easiest way. Because, I forgot to mention, they require you to prepay these things before they even come out. So it's not something they can bill you for, because they figure no one will ever pay it, because I know I wouldn't. But in order for them to come out, you got to prepay this via their PayPal link, which is, conveniently located. So and I said, no, ethically, how can you charge for investigations? And that started, the shitstorm about everyone saying, well, who are you to say you don't know who we are, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, I don't need to know who you are. What I do know is enough about the paranormal field to know that there's no one who knows enough about this place to be able to charge for everyday investigations. It's just, doing a public event where you're bringing people to a location and guiding them through an investigation with your equipment, that's one thing. But when someone calls you for help and you're like, okay, well, what sort of investigation do you want? A $0 donation, a $100 donation, or $200 donation? That kind of rubs me the wrong way. And it's basically, saying that any time you want to come do us to come do an investigation, you got to open up your wallet. And I don't think that's fair. And I think people who do that should be called out on it. And so I did. And I brought to everyone's attention that this group is doing it. And, they claim, well, we don't have any customers, clients, they call them. They should be customers. We don't have any unsatisfied clients. No one's complaining about that. I'm like, well, yeah, just because no one's complaining about it doesn't mean they're satisfied. How many repeat clients do you have? How many people have come to your website and seen this and went on to another group because they're like, I'm not paying for this. You don't know that number, right? That's a population that has not been captured because you don't have that information. So it was something that kind of started something, and it kind of snowballed and ended up in a few Facebook pages and websites about this group, and may or may not gotten somebody unrepresented. So we don't know exactly what the extent of this damage is going to be, but my goal wasn't to run this group into the ground. My goal was just to bring it up to people as far as, just so you know, this isn't okay. It isn't something that people should charge for on a regular basis. Again, a public investigation that you're doing as a fundraiser, because we do those things too. We do public investigations. People come and we basically lead the investigation at a haunted location, and we split the proceeds with the place we're doing the investigation with, and we use that to run like our website and stuff like that. We don't pay for gas money out of this sort of thing. That's something different. If someone calls me up on the phone or sends me an email and says, "Man, my kids are terrified. I don't know what's going on. We're hearing all this stuff. We're seeing all this stuff," I'm not like, "Okay, well, here's my PayPal address. Could you just send me $200 and I'll be right there as soon as I can?" We don't do that. We don't charge for investigations. It's considered in this field, and I thought for a while now, considered to be ethically incorrect to do that. But apparently, some people do not agree with that. And all I did was bring to light to the paranormal community, at least the people who follow me and my group, and follow some of the other websites this stuff was posted on, it was brought to their attention that this group is doing this, and apparently no one had any idea, including myself. I guess I need to start going to all the group websites around by me and making sure that I make sure they're not charging for investigations, because I always have to do some more of these exposés.
Yeah, you're welcome. I'll bring it back on. We'll hash around the group in question anytime you want. Somebody just asked me in the chat room, why do we feel it's not right to charge for a paranormal investigation? And there's no guarantee A will get anything.
Yep.
So we could just go march around somebody's house for a couple hours and not really... We can't really guarantee we're improving anything. Can't guarantee we're getting any, evidence.
Right.
We're studying something that is still so loosely based that it's very difficult to even examine it. So that's why I don't think it's fair to charge. Now, you were saying it's unethical. I think it's our job as a team founder and as a team founder for you to make sure we're telling people, constantly beating them in the face, that we are free.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Exactly, and I've had people hand me wads of cash at the end of investigations, even after I've told them over email, on the phone, and in person before we started the investigation, no, there's no charge for this. There's nothing. You don't have to give us anything. We're doing this because we want to help you. And also, there is even some selfish, I need your property, I need your experiences to try and further my study. I can't recreate this just anywhere. So I need your permission. You're allowing me to come do this. It's helping me as well. So I see it almost as an even trade in that regard. So, in charging, it costs money. I know that. I know the equipment costs money. I know gas costs money. I know the time that's put into this is just astronomical. And but that being said, we don't have anything at the end of the day. It's not like you call me over to fix your furnace and I fix your furnace and your furnace now works again. There's no guarantees in this business.
Yeah.
Not business, in this hobby. And this is something that people need to understand.
That's what I always compare it to, like going to a baseball game.
Yeah.
You know it's going to cost you to park, to eat, to get the ticket. That's fine. I want to go watch the game. I want to go investigate. Same kind of deal.
Exactly. I mean, the difference is that we are taking it serious, and we are trying to get an answer to a question. If the Brewers win or lose, that's our local team. That is what it is.
Well, if they're playing the Pirates, they're going to win. Just saying, it seems like, at least in the last 10 years.
Yeah, no matter what, we do beat the Pirates. Nobody else but the Pirates. But when it comes to charging, especially when you have people who are mediums, the mediums already do something that you can't double check. You can't say, well, she says that there's a spirit who lives in this closet. How do you cross-check that?
You bring another medium in.
That's the only way, right? And I think I am picking up on that. So it's very easy for someone who's a medium to go in and say, oh yes, I answered everyone's questions and everyone is happy and everything is grand. But you're a medium. There's no way to prove what you do. Period. I don't care what you say. You can't prove it. Scientifically, not able to be proven. So it's something that. And when this is the person who's founding this group and running this group, and this is what it's based off of, and I said in my some of my posts, it seems like she started this group. This person started this group as kind of a front to get her to funnel more money into her mediumship business, because you can imagine how you can just add on more and more things, and all of a sudden they become her personal client where she can do readings over the phone, and if you go look at this person's site, you see the charges and how it could very easily rack up to hundreds and hundreds of dollars. And it's been shown that people get suckered into this sort of thing all the time when they think some medium has some inside information and goes to him for everything. My love life, what am I supposed to do about these money troubles, my kids aren't behaving. You can imagine it just goes on and on.
So I got another question here. Do you feel mediums shouldn't be charging?
100%. I feel mediums should not be charging. I think mediums who do charge are highly suspect. Think about it. You are charging for something. You are on the hook. You feel more obligated to deliver because you've charged money for it, or at least you should if you have a soul. Now, you are doing something that someone cannot double check, essentially. And so it kind of gives you free reign to make up something that sounds good or something that will fit the story. Now, granted, some of these mediums are, supposedly bringing up personal information about people and things that nobody could ever know. But it's been shown time and time again. And there's a good book called Psychic Blues out there, which was written by someone who used to be a telephone medium and someone who would go to conferences and be a medium. And he would go, and it's basically mentalism. You're very good at reading people. You understand, you play the odds. The average person is going to have these issues, and it's going to have, based on their age, these people who have died. And so you just play the odds. And you basically take the ones that were not hits, and you just explain them away quickly and move on to something else. And the people, time and time again, will remember the hits and will not remember the ones that they got wrong. And that's just how the vast majority of these things work. Now, I'm not saying there aren't people who are truly mediums out there. That might be something that actually exists. But no one's collected on that $1 million paranormal challenge that James Randi's had out there for a long time. And I would imagine if there was someone who really had these abilities that they could do whenever they wanted to, who doesn't need $1 million? I mean, imagine if you really had these abilities, you would be a multi-millionaire for the money that you would get paid and the deals that you would get signed to. You'd be more rich than any athlete because you're the only person in the world that can, do this. And so those facts in front of me make me think that it's unlikely that there is someone who has these abilities to the extent that these people claim. And long answer to a short question, no. I don't think mediums should charge for what they do. It's entertainment. And if it's billed as entertainment, it might be different. If it's like if you go to see a magician, the magician is doing some things that are, have taken years of experience and practice to hone to get these sorts of things perfected. But at the end of the day, they're not real. The issue with mediums is, at the end of the day, half the people might know it's not real. The other half think it is. And that if it was portrayed in the way of entertainment value only, then I could see you charging for it. But it's because you're duping people in some sense. That's where the issue comes in.
Okay. Last minute of the program. Promote yourself again. Get your name. Well, you don't have to give me your name, but you can give me your website and all that fun stuff.
Sure. Paranormal-Milwaukee.com. On Facebook, you can search for Paranormal Investigators of Milwaukee. You will pop right up. And Twitter is at ParanormalMKE. Please follow us. We have another paranormal expedition coming up in July. We're going back out east. We're going to Mansfield Reformatory, Sedumsville Rectory, Waverly Hills Sanatorium, and Bobby Mackey's Music World. We're rented these places out, so we're going to be investigating these places hard and trying to see if anything matches up with what has been shown on the TV shows as far as the evidence or the history. We also are doing a couple public events, so if you're in the area, we have that information on our website. We have an event in October, an event in November. They're pretty cool. And we do not charge for our investigations, period. You will always get a report. You will always get copies of any evidence that we get. And we'll always be there to help people who need help.
All right, now. Well, I want to thank you for joining me tonight and looking forward to talking again sometime in the future.
Well, thanks so much for having me on, Jim. I appreciate it, and I hope to be on again in the future as well.
And everyone have a good night. I'm going to chase it off here. So
before we flip that on-air sign to the off position, a quick reminder. For all things about the report, previews, and reviews, go to italkparanormal.com. That's italkparanormal.com. Good night.
This is Thomas Fusco, author of the book Behind the Cosmic Veil, a new vision of reality, and you are listening to the Malliard Report.
Hey everybody, it's the Malliard Report. It's the Malliard Report.